Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Ortega's here in Metro Manila. Um, Please, before we start, just got a message from Erin. Could you rename yourself, your name, and your organization? And as the example is Jane Smith, brackets ADB, so that we know who are on the call. I want to welcome you, and a special thanks for the internal team here in ADB to the Circular Economy Working Group webinar series of 2024. These webinar series was set up in June 2022. And it's a webinar showcasing the technical solutions, new approaches, and emerging solutions, and including case studies around circular economy. If you are not signed up for these sessions or you'd like to learn more, the email is circulareconomy@adb.org. So to start off things, I think it's probably best to introduce myself. I am Clyde Hutchison. I am a senior technical specialist or technology specialist with the newly formed ADB Korean Climate Technology Hub here in ADB. We are a joint initiative between ADB and the Korean government, which are helping identify climate technologies and also help with assigning and matchmaking these technologies to various solutions. And throughout my role, one of the things which we have been solidly looking at is looking at circular economy, but more importantly, how we can implement circular economy technologies, especially around solving challenges. Obviously, in the Philippines, one of the biggest challenges is plastic and the dealing of plastic and circular economy. And one of the projects which we are currently working on, and I'm going to do a slight plug before we hand over to get Christine to introduce herself. We're currently working at the cleanup of the Pasig River, and one of those roles is to do the mapping of the plastic in the Pasig River. As many of you are aware, that the Pasig River has been identified as one of the world's leading plastic contaminated rivers, which are adding significant amounts of plastic into the world's oceans. And it's identified at supplying at least 6% of all the river plastic in the oceans. So we are currently this month running a discovery space. If you want to head over to ADB Challenges and want to be further involved, we have a number of teams already in place. We're looking at how we can provide the first indicative digital mapping of the plastic in the river. So I encourage you to look at the ADB Challenges platform. So talking about plastic, we've already identified that the Pasig River is one of the leading sources of plastic going into the ocean. It's estimated that 63,000 metric tons of plastic is entered Manila Bay every year from the Pasig. And throughout my journey looking at this area, one of the most enthusiastic people I've met on how to provide solutions around this has been Christine. So I'm going to actually pass Christine over to do her own introduction, because I don't think I will be able to do justice to Christine and all the work she's done. So Christine, do you want to quickly introduce yourself and have an opportunity to talk a little bit further about both the work which you're leading in Manila Bay, but also the wider circular economy of plastics? Thank you, Christine.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, or wherever you are in the world. I'm super happy to be here. And thank you, Clyde, and to the rest of the team from ADB for inviting us over. I think it's important to be able to tell the story of this specific environmental concern, which is also, is considered a wicked problem of sorts. It's not very easy to really pinpoint what is the best solution. I think the project that we're working right now, which I will present to you today, is just one of the many, I suppose, attempts and innovation, and really want for this particular project to influence and start that conversation in the different sectors of the Philippine society, and hopefully even in around the world. Because clearly we do know, with the numbers that Clyde has actually provided, we do know that there seems to be like a disparity in terms of what kind of plastic pollution or the type or level of plastic pollution or challenges in addressing that kind of problem in the global north versus the global south. And as we know, with the changes in the climate have also exacerbated the adverse effects of mismanaged plastic waste. So I'm Christine and I'm a geologist. I also had a master's in environmental science. So this is something that's really clearly near for me, but my experience in being a project manager of this type of project is to be able to communicate and translate what we're seeing, what we're finding, the things that we're encountering in delivering a project like this. So thank you so much. Back to you, Clyde.
So I encourage everyone, if you have questions, I'm going to give her time to set up her presentation now and share her screen. But I encourage you, if you've got questions, please put them into the chat. We'll have plenty of time to ask questions later on. Christine's now going to give a short presentation, giving you a little bit more detail of the work both Holcim and also their Circular Explorer program is doing within Manila Bay. And I think we're really good to go. So let's try. You've got the black boxes again, Christine. So if you want to try and scroll them down a bit, perfect. Yes.
Okay.
So over to you, Christine.
Okay, so again, the Circular Explorer is what you're seeing in the screen. So it's a catamaran. It has two hulls, and it's powered by solar energy. And in this project, we actually are in partnership. We co-develop it with an NGO named One Earth, One Ocean, because we are also aware that this is not in our core business. Now, for people who are not very familiar with Holcim, we are a global leader in building materials, in building solutions. And I suppose a lot of people, or at least the people that I've talked to, one of their questions is, why is an organization like Holcim from the private sector investing in a project like this? And I think the title of this slide, Driving Circularity from Sea to Cities, is one of the things that we're really campaigning for. Sorry. So I think in Holcim, so I wouldn't dwell so much on this, but as an organization, we do have 4 pillars that drive our sustainability initiatives, because we do know and we are aware of our impact. Climate, circularity, nature, and people. But for this particular project, of course, we fall under the circularity. So in each of the pillars, there are many flagship programs around the world that are being driven by Holcim. So the main tenet is really, we only have one planet, but are living like we have two. And I think the value of circularity is really on trying to manage resources, to manage energy. And so we do believe that a circular global economy could fulfill, hopefully, the people's needs while reducing the materials we extract and use. And so at Holcim, as I've said, we believe that the concept of circular economy would facilitate our net zero journey. And as you can see, we do have boats. One is a sailing boat that goes around the world, joins the ocean race. So it's more of really raising awareness. But we also know that we need to take more tangible action, which is through the Circular Explorer, which is currently deployed in Manila. So I've said this earlier, it's a solar-powered catamaran. The main goal is it collects and we sort the waste and we recycle them. All the waste that are recyclable goes to our recycling partners. I'll talk more about this because I wanted to really drive the point that this type of project does not stop in just intercepting the waste. So let me just go back to Go Circular and the ocean race. So earlier this year, our skippers, we have 2 skippers for the sailing boat. have attended and have been a resource speaker in the 2024 Ocean Decade Conference. And if you're familiar with it, the theme is really towards the science we need for the ocean we want. And so if we do have vessels like this, we want to really drive its use in trying to track, monitor, and get as much data as we want to understand the health of the oceans, right? For a boat like the Go Circular, which is joining the race, it's really bringing that kind of data from parts of the world that are not easily accessible. So that's for the Go Circular. Now, going back to the Circular Explorer, this is just an animation, but I really invite you, if you do have a chance to be in Manila, you approach me, we could collaborate, and I'll show you how it looks like in person. But this is what it looks like, at least in the animation. So you have a wheelhouse, you have the conveyor belt here. Okay. So in terms of the project overview, there are three main streams. I've said this before. We wouldn't want for the project to just stop at being able to collect the marine litter, because I think the main purpose of a project like this goes beyond that. But operationally, what we do is recover marine litter and partner with existing recyclers and upcyclers. So we do two levels of sorting. So one is that when we get it through that conveyor belt that you saw, our local crew, Filipino crew, are sorting them. Firstly, whether there's textile, whether there's plastic, whether you have these water hyacinths that are coming from the Pasig River, right? From Laguna de Bay. And whatever is recyclable goes to recycling partner. Whatever cannot be recycled, because there are waste that are not recyclable. And we call this as residual. We use it for our co-processing. So they are turned from waste to energy, and not just as an alternative fuel for our operations, but also as an alternative raw material. The ash that would come from that would be incorporated back to the cement products. So that's one thing, but I would like to emphasize that waste management hierarchy is very important for us. So the waste that are being co-processed is only a step just before it goes to the landfill, because what we want to do is to divert. If we could divert waste away from the landfill, then that's the goal. So firstly, we prioritize with recycling, and then waste to energy. And so with the hope that we divert waste as much as possible from the landfill. So the second pillar that I would want to talk about, and this is very exciting for us, is on the education part. We understand the importance of really starting people young. We have to start them young, and we need to develop a level of awareness for the future generation, that we equip them of mindset and possibly influence their behavior. So we develop and are now implementing educational toolkits. So we are also conducting workshops with local schools. We also have something called Welcome Aboard sessions. So this is our like alternative learning experience or field trips that we invite children and also students, all the public stakeholders, some policymakers to join us in our trips, or even just at the harbor. Now, the third part is science. We understand that there is a need to track the data, because we have to measure what's really going on to identify how to solve them. So it's very hard to manage something that we haven't measured. And so for this, we partnered with the University of the Philippines, the marine scientists, and on the vessel, there's already an onboard set of microplastic sampler, because the macroplastic data comes from the intercepted waste, right? So we do see that. But we also understand the threat of the microplastic pollution. So we have a microplastic sampler on board together with environmental sensors. So for example, it also monitors data such as dissolved oxygen, turbidity, temperature, chlorophyll A and B. So some of the other parameters, environmental parameters, just to understand what's going on in the bay while the vessel is operating, we do get this data. But the main goal is for us to, from the findings that we get, is to be able to gain new insights and hopefully recommend actions to the policymakers. These are just a list. I understand that the three pillars, the way that I presented it, but they are actually intertwined. So whatever it is that we get from the science, right, we wanted to be able to translate it to the public, to the policymakers, and to everybody, basically. And then, of course, the operational part is very essential for the data that that are being collected by the scientists. So this is just a video on maybe just well, for one, to increase to just add on the insights that I've said thus far. So we do, hopefully it works.
There is a lack of offshore data for marine plastics pollution. And that's why we are working with the Circular Explorer to be able to gather that needed baseline information, collect the needed data for offshore macroplastics and microplastics pollution, so that we can upload it to the portal. And then from there, people can view it, can see it, download it, and be able to create data-driven solutions to the plastic problem.
Directly on at sea, where you can directly observe plastic pollution and the ocean itself, it can actually provide us more information, more insights that we cannot just get through modeling or just by theoretical knowledge. And because of that, I think we can actually provide more detail and hopefully provide more action and strategies towards addressing pollution in the marine environment of the country.
Okay. So, oh no, there's a, okay. So just to proceed with, so what have we found out so far? So these are just numbers, but I think they are numbers that are important for the audience to understand what we're doing. So right now, we've collected about 66,000 kilograms of marine litter. And what we're seeing in the data is that plastics actually comprise about 30% of the mix. It changes a bit depending on the season. So there are times wherein you have more of the organics, more of the driftwood, and it normally coincides with the monsoon or the typhoon season. But during summer, you get a bit more of the plastics. But on average, that's the amount of plastics that we're seeing from the total marine litter that we're collecting. And of course, that's the Circular Explorer, while it's working at the bay, we also organize a lot of coastal cleanups to understand to try to correlate what kind of data are we getting from the sea and how similar they are from the beach. How much of this actually goes into the sea? Are there any differences, or are we expecting the same sort of trends? So on the second part, on advancing marine science, we're not stopping just on the data. We also do, and I'm very proud to say and talk about this, is that we have 100 early career researchers and educators that are trained from 50 different universities and government agencies across the country. And for this number, it's 350 is the target that I've set together with our marine scientists. I've asked them if at least by end of this year, we could really collect, process, and analyze 350 microplastic samples. And then one of the commitment from the university is to also deliver 5 technical papers. 2 are being written at the moment. Of course, I would want them to be peer reviewed, and that goes through. I also asked and requested them to create white papers so that we could actually translate the findings and translate it to the policymakers, to the decision makers, because that's important. And then I've mentioned this. So in terms of raising awareness, these are the numbers that we're looking at. This is just a sample. Maybe I can show a bit more of what the educational toolkit looks like. But at the moment, we're targeting, at the very least, like 10 public schools where we roll this out. I am very happy to share that the Department of Education has reviewed and endorsed the toolkit. And this was launched back in August this year. Now, I think the Circular Explorer, although it's basically an interceptor / research vessel, it is also a platform for us to be able to gain a share of voice in the different sectors in order to create, hopefully formulate solutions after identifying, what really are the challenges and problems. And this is what I was mentioning before. Although the vessel is currently deployed in Manila, since the Philippines is an archipelagic country, I feel that it's very important that we do have scientists, researchers who are equipped to conduct research skills, and be able to communicate as well. So the Prime TP, which is short for Plastics Research Intensive Methods Training Program, has been running since October 2022. We've had 4 legs now. The last one being is the one that's for Luzon. It enables many of our young researchers that, although this particular technology, our vessel is currently deployed in Manila, is that they are equipped to be able to conduct baseline research and answer some research questions regarding plastic pollution and know more about circular economy. So you can see the distribution of the schools, and that they would be able to also teach and cascade it to students, to their own communities, for example, as well. Now, just to give the audience an example of what we see, for example, in Manila Bay on some days. So there's a trail of marine litter and first scale, so that's in Manila. And in terms of the microplastics, our partners at the university, at least they would classify large microplastics, that's 1 millimeter to 5 millimeter. And then small microplastics are anything that's less than that. Why are we interested in this? Because I think these are the ones that actually we are probably and most likely eating now from the food that we have, right? And it's affecting the entire food web. And if you look more about the issue of the microplastics, there are emerging studies more and more. And I think we need to understand what kind of plastics are pervasive or are, so we see what kind of plastics are in the sea, the ones that we see from our own set of eyes. But what are the kinds that actually go very, very small? Right? So we need to understand that better. Now, what I want to show to you is an AI model that was developed. So there is an AI model that has been developed by the team from the University of the Philippines through the Plastic Count project, the same project that created the portal that I've shown earlier, and where the data from the Circular Explorer will also be uploaded. And this plastic count project, I just wanted to say that this was funded by the Philippine government through DOST, the Department of Science and Technology, and also from the Japan Science and Technology and the UK Research Institute. Now, right now, that AI model is being optimized using the marine litter data that's collected from the Circular Explorer. So initially, they've trained and tested this model in the beach, because that's more accessible. But now that we have this vessel, we would be able to understand a bit better, hopefully. Can you see the screen? So here you see how it identifies whether it's a wrapper, whether it's a fragment of plastic, whether it's a lid or a cap. And so that's from the conveyor belt. So that quickly helps us identify how many, what type. And it's important because, for example, if we're seeing a lot of wrappers, food wrappers, then we get to have that conversation with the sector, with the food sector, right? With the policymakers. How do we address? How do we make sure? What can we do in the future? Now, in some parts of the Philippines, I was told by our partner marine scientists that they have more issues on fishing gear. So then we also talk to the fishing industry, for example. Okay. So again, it's very important to be able to engage with the different sectors, the public authorities, because they would drive the regulatory environment. And again, with the educational sector. So this is the sample of our Circular Explorer high school workbook, but we also have something for the primary school, so comic books. And I think ultimately what we really want, and I've mentioned this at the beginning, is that this project helps to tell the story of the plastic pollution problem in the country. And what we hope to do is to inspire the public and the government leaders to take action. So this particular documentary won an award from the DOST for science communication. This was captured by and made by the team in GMA, so one of the outlets. But so these are important. There are many other important stories in terms of how does plastic pollution impact our fisher folks. Maybe we know that, but it's still different from their perspective and hearing them talk about it. So, and I think that's it for now, Clyde, because I would want for the audience to have an opportunity to ask questions. The remaining of my presentation is really the link of this project in the UN Sustainable Development Goals, but it's very clear, SDG 14, and maybe on the consumption and production patterns. This one as well, because as the municipalities grow, more waste is generated. But also this, in timely for what's been happening and what we're seeing, right? So what studies have shown is that regions vulnerable to flooding, clearly the Philippines is, often coincide with high plastic mobilization. And we've seen this, right, on how it works. And we do need to have all of this efforts, the cleanup, mitigation measures, and other risk management to be managed holistically. And that's why even an organization such as Holcim really understands the call of we need all hands to be on deck. So I think that's it. And finally, partnerships are very important. And for us, it's significant that we find organizations that are like-minded or at least share the same interest and are willing to work towards the same goal.
Okay, well, thank you, Christine. I'll just get you to stop sharing your presentation. And I'm going to start off being selfish and start to ask you a question for the work which I'm doing. And thankfully, from your last slide, you sort of asked this already. Obviously, we're in the process of doing the Plastic River plastic waste discovery space, where we're trying to get teams to collaborate. And we're going to go ahead and do a procurement for a modeling of the plastic. A lot of those teams would be looking to collaborate with you. So how do people collaborate if some of the teams want to work with you, which obviously you're working with a lot of people and some of the key stakeholders already here in Manila. But if people want to partner with you and collaborate, how do they go about that?
So they would just have to like send me an email. So I'll let the organizers also share my email and just send it. One of the other ways is if you could also visit the Circular Explorer webpage at Holcim. So you could also reach somebody there. But since I'm already here, you could directly just send me an email. So
Perfect.
that's one.
I will take you on your word, and I will put
Yes.
your email in a safe message space within the discovery space, so that any of the teams which are not currently in touch with you, because obviously some of the teams are already, because they're your existing partners, that they have an opportunity to partner with you, because obviously the work you're doing is super interesting and super vital for the work, because obviously one of the main challenges, if we're currently looking at the circular economy, is how do we generate the circular economy, and not only education. I see a number of questions coming in, so I'm going to start off with from DC Sekar. Would you be interested in continuing the plastic problem at its tail end beyond modeling the leakage? We have installed Plastic River not plastic anymore, I'm obsessed with passive river barriers that stop 22,000 tons of trash, with 10% of the plastic reach the sea, 9 cities, 35 locations visible on Google Earth. So Alpha Farm. So that's not really a question. That sounds like a short advertisement, but again, if you're interested in that, the best way is to contact you. Is it?
Yeah, still with the email, just send an email. And just to answer, yes, of course, I think the main thing here is, at least in my experience, we get to see the challenges, the limitations, for example, of the vessel. Like, for one, if we want to really increase the scale, what kind of other do we need to modify the vessel? Do we need to partner with other already existing organizations or other solutions to address the problem? So what I'm understanding right now, and what I'm very happy about, is that GeoCycle is a solid waste management arm of Holcim, is trying to address problems on land, right? Partnering with for their waste to energy processes. And then you have the Circular Explorer at the sea. And it's very important that we do collaborate with people who are in the rivers, because all the more that, as you've said, you've said
DC.
here, if there are, DC, if you have a way to actually trap them before they actually reach the sea, all the better, right? I think what the Circular Explorer is doing, because it's already in the bay, is to actually show the people and the actors in this field that, hey, these are the type of plastics that are really reaching out at the sea. Is there a way that we could prevent them at all? And really monitor beyond, like longitudinal, right? In terms of trying to understand how do these initiatives really address the problem from land to the seaside. Hopefully we get less and less of the waste.
That's the goal. The goal is to make yourself redundant at all these projects. But so we have a technical one from Edgar de Jesus, or Edgar de Jesus, depending on your pronunciation, at BSD, do you correlate the number of identified waste by an AI model with the actual weight of waste collected? I know the answer to this one. Collected, and can AI be used as a way of measuring the amount of waste in terms of weight? Christy.
So right now, like when we talk about developing and testing the AI, at first to understand whether how accurate they are, there needs to be that kind of manual person really identifying anyway to really train the model, right? And that's the first part. Now, that's in trying to identify the way that this AI model works is it sees that whether it's a wrapper, whether it's a lid, whether it's a its bottle. Now, since you've trained it, then you have an idea of how many. It's really a count. In terms of trying to correlate it with the weight, I think right now it's still at the, you need to manually still like try to weigh them. So but in terms of being able to know, like, are we getting more wrappers? Are we getting more beverage bottles, for example? That's what the AI could very easily do at the moment. But right now, operationally, the way that we do it, we still sort them and then we weigh them. And so we do have sorters that does that for us.
Perfect. Krista, sorry, my pronunciation is horrible.
Sorry, Clyde, I
Or,
just realized, sorry. So
or
just
you
to
can
follow
finish.
up, yeah, of course you can, once you've sorted it, right? You could have like probably correlate it from the data that what the AI has seen. And maybe from there try to, with more and more data, I could imagine that you could eventually maybe try to estimate, but we're not yet there at the moment. We've just
Yeah.
developed the,
So
optimized.
what you're saying is you still need a manual collection
At the moment,
to be accurate with the collection. So the AI is just not there, but the more you train it, the better the models will become.
yeah, right now I think the accuracy of the model is at 90%, Clyde. So in terms of doing that, so you would want to optimize it better, but I don't think 90% is low. But you could correct me, right? So yeah.
Well, as someone who used to depend on students, 90% is usually okay. But probably people will criticize me for saying that, so I'll move on before I get myself into trouble. So the next question is, how do we reach out regarding your plastic research
Ah,
intensive methods training program?
okay, so as I've said, you could also just send me an email, but our partners at the University of the Philippines, the lab of Dr. Deo Florence Onda, they do have a Facebook page in their lab, and they normally announce this. So like there's a call for application for this Prime TP. So in the past, we've had, with all of those legs, a call for application was sent out and people have applied and that was deliberated on, and that's how it normally is. So yeah, it's usually there's a public call for that.
And
But if you want to know more, then you can
where's the
just send
training
it.
programs being held at the moment? Is it all right
Okay,
throughout
so in each of
Philippines, or is it?
yeah, so what we did, so for example, because we went for a regional kind of thing as well. So we had Mindanao, we had Visayas, and we had Luzon. So what the UPMSI is doing is trying to partner with another institution there that could host for a laboratory. If it in case and it happened before, like for example in Mindanao, we had to fly some of the equipment, some of the laboratory, just because to be able to really explain things. So what we do is we partner with a university from that particular region so that the people don't have to really fly Mindanao going to Manila, right? So that's the idea.
Perfect. Next question is for my colleague Ming. So, hi Ming. Based on the data collected, which sectors are the highest contributions to the waste, and what dialogue is already taking place to manage it from this source? So who are the people producing the most waste, and what kind of dialogue are you having with the people, the generators of this waste?
So I've seen from the data, and you could also, if anybody just goes to and join us in any of the operations. Oh, and if anybody is curious, the Circular Explorer vessel goes out at sea every day except for weekends. But we do have some exceptions on a Saturday, for example, if there's really, like a request for a ride out. But so we do this every day, but Mondays and Wednesdays are dedicated for research. And the rest of the days are for active collection. Now, just to answer the question. So what we're seeing in Manila Bay, there's still a lot of wrappers. So many are food wrappers. So food wrappers, so the ones that kids use, for example, the covers of cookies, like the ones that are for beverage, for juice, and things like this. And so this is the sector that we are engaging, and I think all of the other FMCGs, for example, are aware. But what we're seeing in the data is a discussion that we can tell them, right? So is there a way that we can really maybe redesign the package? And this is addressed in the EPR law, right? In the Extended Producers Responsibility Act. And I think many of the players, if they had submitted their commitment to the government, are really looking into addressing these issues. But in Metro Manila, that's the case. I was told that in Palawan, it's a bit different. You don't see much of the bottles, like the beverage bottles, because apparently the fishermen actually use them as buoy for their boats. So they actually reuse them, so you don't see them floating out at sea. What you do see in Palawan or in some parts of the Philippines are more of the fishing nets. So because this is the kind of industry that's more common there. And what does it tell us? It tells us that our solutions or even our policies have to be localized and contextualized even across the Philippines. So you can't have like a one blanket policy that you will just copy from, the central capital Manila and apply that to the different parts of the Philippines. And that's the kind of conversation that we're driving, that we need to develop policies that are actually localized, context specific, and in fact responsive to the needs of the people. Because does that particular area have the capability to even implement the solution that we're seeing? And that's a continuous discussion with the government. And we're there. We are discussing with the DNR, we're discussing with the different local government units. So thank you for that question.
In terms of the FMCG companies, I'm not going to name any of them in case they get upset, but are you having direct conversations with them because you're seeing their products? So how are you engaging those in terms of their responsibility?
So as I've said, I think what the Extended Producer Responsibility Act of 2022 has also managed to do is to actually give this kind of mandate and require enterprises to really look into their plastic footprint, look into their packaging footprint. Now, it's not, of course, foolproof in terms of are all companies being required? There is a limit, right, in terms of who they are requiring. But at least for the large enterprises, the FMCGs are definitely being required. Many of them are being required. The question is, in that kind of conversation as well, I'm very happy that we do have that, because normally it's a consumer. The conversation has always been, oh, you need to sort. Clearly, our society needs to do that. Like individually, that is an effort that we can do. among ourselves. But I think it's also important that now you have something like this, and the producers are also, being at that kind of level of obligation, in a sense, to really try to come up with solutions to either really directly reduce, or if not, because they do have, like, of course, they have to deliver certain numbers, but to just rethink the kind of design that they're working on. And you could see that, I think there's a movement in terms of the kind of material that different actors are now trying to adapt. But Clyde, as I talk more and more about, with them, there is also a question on the time that or how appropriate a particular innovation, especially when you're working in food, right? There is a shelf life component that they have to look into. And there is a cost component, but also there's a shelf life, like food safety concern. So that what they're saying is, we need to understand a replacement, for example, or an alternative package, um, that also ensures that kind of that still meets that level of food safety, or packaging or shelf life for food. And so that's just one of the things that I remember at the top of my head. Yeah.
Mm, I'm just moving down the comments. DC has came back, reminding us about the usefulness of satellites. Ming has another question. Education toolkits have been developed, and what strategy is to give it to as many schools as possible across the country? So, what are you
Yeah.
doing
So
with the school kids, and how are you getting it into as many school kids' hands as possible?
okay. So as I've said, what we did, although it took a bit more time, is to not just develop a toolkit that we can just share in a platform, but we also understood that we need the buy-in, of course, the support of the government, and that's why these toolkits were. We've sent them to the Bureau of Curriculum Development at DepEd, and also the Learning Resource Bureau of DepEd, the Department of Education, because we want to get their feedback, and precisely because we want to give this and be part of the curriculum. Now, in terms of the strategy, now that it has been fully endorsed, it's we have talked to the schools division office, and also to try to integrate and follow what we want to do is to try to follow the Education for Sustainable Development framework from UNESCO, wherein you could integrate concepts of sustainability and circularity, not just in the science subjects, not just in the science papers or environment papers, but to actually equip the teachers to be able to say, for example, if I'm a math teacher, I'll create and format my word problems that incorporates a concept of sustainability. So, for example, in a problem wherein if there was an oil spill, or if Pasig River, or if these residents are throwing this much waste, how much are we seeing? And then if it's for even for say, for example, social science or history teachers, they'd be able to still integrate this conversation. So, for example, how important is the Manila Bay during the Manila Acapulco trade before, in the past, right? And how does the port actually have changed over the years, and what kind of impacts it has done in the country? And so I think being able to integrate that and having that. Now, on top of that, we also understand, and these are open access. We actually have that in the platform. But what I'm asking the team right now is to also be able to understand the metadata on the who downloads it. We need to understand how actively, so there are metrics that are being built towards this. Oops.
It's a part of one of the works you've been doing is trying to get it into the national curriculum of schools.
Yes, so that's part. I mean, in a way, it's already what the each of the school right now has what they call YES-O program. It's a It's for like science component. There are clubs in each of the of the schools, but also there's a teachers training that needs, so we do teachers training, we do capacity building, but we also don't want to interfere or become a burden for a lot of teachers. That's also a concern, right? Like we have public school teachers that are, that are probably overwhelmed with a lot of issues. I just need to plug in my laptop. Sorry, everyone. Okay. No, but
I'll
there are
talk. I'll fill if you want.
no, but
You okay?
just to answer the strategy as well. Of course, it's not like Holcim is doing this on its own. As I've said, there are partnerships that we do. And so there are people we understand that there are organizations that are really equipped and knows how to deploy this and really help us roll them out. So,
And
yeah.
who are you partnering with to roll out the educational programs?
Yes, so together with us, we roll it out so we've identified the schools in Metro Manila first, but also as an organization because we're present in Bulacan, in La Union, in Davao, and also in Lugait in Mindanao. We do have partner schools, and of course, we give them that. Right? We also deploy them readily because that's a low-hanging fruit for us. But in Metro Manila alone, we've identified schools that we partner. And so hopefully we get to, like really roll them out eventually on a much wider space.
And then in terms of, I just want to remind people we're probably got about 5 minutes late, 5 minutes left. So if you've got any questions, please put them into chat. Just to carry on, hi Christine. Christine Chan, if anybody who doesn't know on this call, is one of the people which is probably leading a lot of the efforts around the Pasig River within ATB. So hi, Christine. Thank you for your question. And she's saying thank you to you, Christine. So we're in double Christine land. How is the waste data collection by plastic count? Thank you for mentioning plastic count. In part of the discovery space, we've also been promoting that as a resource for people to find out data around plastic, which has been, as you said, supported by University of Philippines or UP, being utilized by producers to redesign more sustainable and biodegradable products for recycling, and by policymakers for tracking EPR or extended producers responsibility implementation.
Okay, so I would probably be speculating here. I don't have a direct information on how active, for example, the private sector or the other organizations are in terms of using the plastic count. And I think it's a matter of us really trying to say and tell people, hey, this is really happening. But one of the things that I've seen the team behind here, like Dr. De Onda is doing, is to really be on the conferences. Normally, there are, say, for example, solid waste management conferences that are being attended by the sustainability managers of each of the organizations, for example. And these are good areas to really promote platforms like this. Now, in terms of the uptake, that's good, Christine, to ask, because I'm pretty sure that there is a metadata as well from the side of the Plastic Count portal. Now, as to how actively do we follow up, right? So if we see somebody from an FMCG company downloading or seeing this data, it would be good to have that conversation, right? To really actively talk about, so how are you using this? Is this something that you just talk internally? Is this something that you bring to the product development team, right? So I think that's good. It's a good idea to be able to say and be able to track how useful a data is being used practically. Is it practical? Is it useful for the private sector, right? Or are we just seeing, again, more downloads from the scientific community? And that's what we want to really also change, right? That it's not just the scientists reading their fellow scientists' data. It's really wanting the public, or even, and more so, the policymakers read and learn about the data. And I think that's what we need to do as people who are really concerned about this, to have more of that conversation and to create more opportunities and avenues to be able to do that.
Okay, and Erin has reminded me not to do my job better, but to remind anybody who has any questions and they don't feel they want to share, or they come up with a question after the webinar, please, you can send follow-up emails to circulareconomy@adb.org, and we'll try and get back to you with any answers or any questions. So looking to the future, where is this project going, and where do you think, if you had a magic wand, what kind of resources and what would you like to do? So what's the next couple of years going to look like for both Holcim and also the circular economy, and what do you think is needed to promote circular economy in a wider, not only in Metro Manila, but across the Philippines?
So I think what we're seeing right now is more and more technologies and efforts towards trying to understand the baseline, counting, identifying, and that's what all of these other solutions and the teams of from UP are doing, because it's important, right? As I've said, you can't manage something that you haven't measured, but equally, beyond the technology transfer or knowledge transfer, as what we're doing, is we hope that we could integrate this to the people, increase the livelihood of the people that are really affected by this problem. Because I think there is a people component in this problem. And sometimes we tend to disassociate, like, oh, okay, because if I throw my waste and it's gone from my eyes, then it's gone. And really don't really see where it goes, right? It goes to the landfill, maybe somebody has used it. But if we could have that collaborative space wherein, of course, the government will be there to support more recyclers, more upcycling facilities, for example, that would give that would not only just address the problem of waste, but also help out Filipinos. Maybe there is a way that we could have an additional source of income, not really an alternative income, but at least to start with, like an additional source of income for the communities that are also suffering from here, right? You know, the coastal communities, or even those that are living near the rivers, near the bay. I think there is that kind of, as I've mentioned before, and what studies have shown before, to really address it more holistically rather than like a single component. And if there is a group, a working group, or perhaps this is what your working group is doing, right? The answer at
I was
ADB.
getting my plug in after you were finished, so don't worry about that.
So like eventually to be able to connect each of these efforts. And as I would always say to anybody, it's important for us to get feedback, because we don't know whether a particular technology or how you see this, if you see. And so I really appreciate the question on, so what kind of strategy, because that gives us that there are many efforts. What I'm afraid of is that while we're gaining track on, in terms of, oh, people are becoming more aware and people would like to help a bit more, I want us also to become a bit more efficient and effective, that we make sure that we are effective in trying to identify solutions, and that we're not just really boom dumping a solution that is not really usable for the people in the long run. So I think
Yeah, we completely agree with you. I think that what we're currently doing, part of the ADB Challenge platform, the Pasig River Plastic Waste Discovery Space, is trying to build that baseline or digital twin for the Pasig River, so we have that information, so we know the facts and we know the difference around that. So I want to take this opportunity to thank you for your time, Christine, and thank you for getting up so early in the morning, because I know you're in Europe. So I appreciate it. I also want to thank the team, Aaron, Robbie, and Ice, for putting together everything. The webinar is coming to an end, so my final job is to remind everybody, please fill out the survey which will pop up on your screen after the webinar. And keep in touch for the further webinar series which is coming through and other events which are coming through this platform. So thank you, Christine, again for your inspiring work, and looking forward for everybody to connect with you for partnerships. And also for those who are not involved in the discovery space, please either reach out to me or reach out using the email at circulareconomy@adb.org. So thank you once again, and thank you for everyone who joined us today for the webinar. Thanks once again.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.